We've got a fantastic show for you today. I'm speaking with Max Mowitz, the director of OneIowa. We learn a lot about the work that OneIowa does to protect LGBTQ rights. We resist the temptation to go off on a long tangent about talking about classical music at the University of Illinois. We discuss the merits of horses and ducks, and we find ways that everyone can get involved to support the community. Enjoy the show. It's Great to Meet You is a production of the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. At First Unitarian, we love radically, grow ethically and spiritually, and serve justly. Unitarian Universalism is a pluralistic religious tradition, meaning we don't have a dogmatic statement of belief. Rather, we covenant with one another to put love at the center of our actions. We recognize the inherent worth and dignity of everyone and our interconnectedness with one another. And so our justice work seeks to affirm that worth for all people. If you think all people should be able to flourish and you believe your spiritual journey is less about dogma and more about how you treat one another in the world, you might be a UU. Let's get to the show. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me on It's Great to Meet You, the show where we meet the good people of Des Moines out there doing the good work. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Seek, and I serve as the minister at the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. Today, we're talking with Max Mowitz, the executive director of OneIowa. Max, it's great to meet you.
Howdy, it's so good to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's our pleasure. Max, tell us about OneIowa. Tell us about your work.
Well, OneIowa is one of the statewide LGBTQ advocacy organizations. We work all across the state, and we focus on a few main areas. One of them is healthcare access. This is something that folks are thinking about a lot right now as our healthcare is under attack. We also focus a lot on workplace culture and supporting LGBTQ workers throughout the state. And we have an amazing LGBTQ Leadership Institute. So we focus a lot on empowering and uplifting LGBTQ leaders across the state. Of course, a lot of people, unfortunately, also know us for our work at the Iowa State Capitol with our 501c4 OneIowa Action. So if you are keeping up or paying attention to any of the anti-LGBTQ legislation that is coming through the legislative session, that is the work that we're doing to fight that anti-LGBTQ legislation and also try to pass positive legislation that would uplift and support LGBTQ Iowans. So we're involved at that level as well. But we also are very engaged and active in direct service for LGBTQ Iowans to try to make sure that folks have the resources and support that they need. And we also do programming with other state-based organizations and local organizations like Des Moines-based organizations like the Des Moines Pride Center, Capital City Pride, and other orgs as well.
Wow, that sounds like a very busy week's work. Let's take some of the pieces of it here. So you mentioned for statewide LGBTQ advocacy. What does that look like?
For us, statewide LGBTQ advocacy means supporting individuals, obviously, across the state that identify as LGBTQ. But I think another big part of that for us is systems change work. So an example of this is that not only are we supporting an LGBTQ person in Northwest Iowa if they're trying to access mental health support and need someone who's LGBTQ affirming, we have a really robust resource guide. And so we can work off of that. We have an internal resource guide. And so we can get folks that care. But we also then are working with healthcare organizations and providers in that area to make sure that they know how to work with LGBTQ folks and that they also know the community organizations that can support them and can support their LGBTQ patients. So that's an example of how we're working statewide. I think a lot of this also comes from our history as an organization. We were actually founded as a marriage equality organization back in 2005. And if you're not familiar, Iowa was the third state in the country to access same-sex marriage, partially because of the work that we did at that time. So we were deep canvassing and changing people's minds about same-sex marriage back then all across the state as well.
I didn't know that, but I did know that my predecessor here officiated the first same-sex marriage in Iowa, but that was largely through the advocacy efforts that the OneIowa was doing back in 2005 and 6. Wow. So that's a little bit on that's not that's a pretty comprehensive amount of work on the systems change through the state. And then And you talked about the advocacy there. You're also talking about advocacy through the One Iowa Action, the 501(c)(4). So
Mhm.
I appreciate you pulling out the two threads there. One is speaking out against immoral legislation and legislation that prohibits civil rights. But then there's the other part of it, which is that path advocating for legislation that's more affirming. Can you speak about that second part? I think a lot of our listeners are familiar with the state legislation. Well, actually, let's not assume. First, catch us up on what happened in July, and then what are some of the things that you're working on going forward?
Yeah, well, of course, our policy and advocacy work has changed a lot over the many years that we've existed for the reason that you mentioned. In the past, we were able to advocate for really positive legislation, and we still do that work. But for example, in this past legislative session, we saw the passage of the Civil Rights Removal Act, which removed gender identity from the Iowa Civil Rights Act and stripped folks of protections from discrimination, not only if they are trans or non-binary or gender diverse, but also if they are perceived to be trans, non-binary, or gender diverse. So that legislation impacts everyone, not just the trans community, not just the LGBTQ community. And that piece of legislation went into effect on July 1st. So to mention, the July date that you mentioned there, but what we are seeing is a upturn in anti-LGBTQ legislation here in Iowa over the past 5 or so years. We used to see maybe one or two hostile bills in a legislative session, and now we're seeing dozens, and we're also killing dozens. So for every time we see a piece of legislation pass, like the gender identity, removal piece of legislation, we are also seeing lots of pieces of legislation not make it through partially because of our advocacy work. So there's also a lot to celebrate there, even though it's negative and it's a really, really challenging time. Now, examples of positive legislation that we either support or collaborate with other organizations on include, for example, like a conversion therapy ban. That's something that we
Mm-hmm.
don't have in the state of Iowa. And so we're always going to advocate for something like that, for example. In the past, we have advocated for legislation around hate crimes and how they impact trans Iowans, because currently our hate crime statute includes sexual orientation, but not gender identity, for
Oh,
example.
interesting. Yeah.
So those would be some examples of positive things, but we also work in collaboration with our immigrant rights organizations, reproductive rights organizations, and any organization that is doing work that's going to positively impact LGBTQ Iowans. We're also supporting them on their positive legislation as well.
Mm, wow. Can you say more about the healthcare access part of One Iowa's work?
Well, this work is really interesting right now.
Hmm.
If you are familiar with the news cycle currently, gender affirming care is where we're seeing a lot of healthcare access be impacted, in addition to HIV and AIDS prevention work as well.
Hmm.
So, one of the things that we focus on in training, community education, and resource directing is making sure that LGBTQ people have access to affirming and specialized LGBTQ care. We have a program coordinator with our team that is also stationed down at the Unity Point LGBTQ clinic, for example, supporting clients there. So that's an example of the ways that we are doing healthcare access work. But one of the biggest things that we're doing right now is supporting individual LGBTQ affirming providers and helping them access the support that they need to continue to do the work that they do, because that healthcare is under a lot of scrutiny. And on the federal level, we're seeing cuts to that healthcare. We're seeing cuts to grant funding for organizations that provide healthcare, and we're seeing a lot of misinformation. So currently, the state of that work is trying to reduce harm, trying to support folks that are trying to give people really good, positive care, and then also making sure that LGBTQ Iowans know how to find those providers too.
Max, as I'm hearing all of this, it sounds I'm simultaneously inspired by the organized efforts of One Iowa and also just imagining that every day is a pretty long day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is really challenging work, but I say every day that as it gets more challenging, as we continue to see more hostility, there is genuinely nothing I would rather be doing. I don't know what else I could do in this moment other than this. And I also think that while the work is challenging, I have the best team. And every single day, I see a new person get angry about what's happening to their LGBTQ neighbors and want to do something about it. So I just see so many people stepping up in ways that not everyone gets to see. And I think that's something very special about the work that we do at
Hmm.
OneIowa.
How can the Des Moines community help One Iowa in your work?
There are a few ways to do this. I think one of them, and this is just an overall recommendation as we move through days and months that are going to feel really challenging coming forward, staying engaged is going to be really important, and being lucid about what engagement can look like for you is also important because I know that people listening to this are going to have a variety of different experiences. So staying engaged does not mean that you have to be at the Capitol or every city council meeting or writing your legislators. Being engaged can include things like engaging in mutual aid so that your neighbors can eat, engaging in LGBTQ affirming programming, attending Pride, all sorts of different things, whatever is going to work for an individual person. I want people to continue to feel and see themselves in the fight, even if that's small. So that's broad. But the way that you can support us, of course, is things like supporting our work financially, supporting our work with donations and showing up to our events and things like that. But ultimately, the way that folks can support us right now is to reach out and get involved in what we're doing and make sure that if there is a space that you're in, be it your workspace, your church, your sports league, whatever you're working in, if there is an opportunity for that space to be more inclusive, please reach out to us because we want to be partners with folks that are trying to create safety in small and big ways in their communities as well.
Yeah, you had mentioned earlier work with workplace culture. So we can go to the website, which I will put in the show liner notes, to find ways to get involved. Would that be a good way for people to connect with the resources that you're already providing?
Absolutely. I would say look at our website, see if there's something that resonates with you or something you're interested in, and reach out, and we will get you connected where you feel like you're going to feel the most inspired and most engaged.
Max, we've heard some of the incredible work that you're doing here with One Iowa. I think a lot of the folks that admire your leadership would like to get to know you a little bit more. So we have a speed round of questions here. First question, what is your favorite place to eat in Des Moines?
My favorite place to eat in Des Moines is oh, you already said speed round, and I'm already like behind on the speed round. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. Okay. My favorite place to eat in Des Moines is probably Lucky Lotus. I love that there's a lot of different options. It's queer friendly and queer owned, and it's also lovely to be inside. It's like so cute and pretty. So I love it there.
I'll check it out. Where's your favorite place to go outdoors in Des Moines?
I love the trail behind the art center. It starts in the art center rose garden and it goes back through parts of waterworks. It's along like a stream and a river. It's so beautiful and you kind of feel like you're in a different world when you're back there.
I was on it this morning. It's my favorite
Oh
place in Des
my
Moines.
gosh, look at
Where's
us.
your where's your favorite place to go indoors?
My favorite place to go indoors in Des Moines is the Temple for Performing Arts. That is where restaurants like Centro and South Union are located on the first floor. But the Temple for Performing Arts is where a lot of Des Moines performing arts performances are done. But it's my favorite place to go because I grew up in the Des Moines Youth Symphony. I played the harp. I played the harp inside that building and still practice that harp. And so that building just feels really wonderful to me and it's beautiful. So if you haven't been there, definitely go and take a look around and see a show.
Dear listener, I am holding off on 11 follow-up questions about classical harp playing right now. Uh, where do you side on the grocery store debate in Des Moines?
Oh, well, I'm kind of a weirdo. I'm a big farmers market fan, so I go to the farmers market every single weekend morning. So recommend starting there. And I actually really love Campbell's, which is a small, it's 85 years old, like independent food store in Des Moines. It's locally owned, and that's where I try to get most of my groceries. So I'm kind of in my own little camp.
Oh, I love that. Okay. And then do you have any particular opinion about the Cyclones, Hawkeyes, Bulldogs, or Panthers?
I do not. I went to school at the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana. So when I think of U of I think of University of Illinois. So I'm nonpartisan, I guess.
All right, and dear listener, I'm holding off on 11 questions because I also went to the University of Illinois. We're going to move now to, we have a question jar from kids at First Unitarian. I never quite know what I'm going to pull out, but here's the one that you get, Max. Are Transformers real? This was a 4-year-old.
Oh, I love this question. Yeah, why not? I think that Transformers are like so many other fictional pieces of our world and that they're based in something real. And so if I were to talk to a kiddo about this, and like the folks that thought of Transformers, the folks that made that come to life so that you could watch it on your TV, that's real to them. And I think that there's also many different ways to be a Transformer in our world. And I think being a trans person is kind of similar to that. So I vote yes, I have decided.
I hadn't even clocked that parallel there until this moment. Okay, that's a great answer. And then here is our staff here has a delightful collective sense of humor. So they've given us a choice today. We can do a foreign language challenge or a would you rather.
Oh, let's go would you rather. How about that?
Okay, this one gets pretty meta. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Oh, um, I think 100 duck-sized horses.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I come down on that.
Can you elaborate on how you landed on that?
Well, I feel like ducks are already very aggressive. I had a very small, like when I was a very small child, I had a bad experience with a duck. So I think a giant duck,
Hmm.
I
Okay.
think I'm out of my element there. But a bunch
Yeah.
of duck-sized horses, I feel like I could use perhaps a strategy to, rally them together or kind of be able to manage that size, like the group of duck-sized horses, I suppose. But one giant duck, I think, would be a lot for me. So
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because that comes back to a childhood memory. Because I'm thinking of it as more of it's a question around like, are you afraid of like the one big monster or the swarm? And so for me, I feel like I'd have a better chance at the horse-sized duck.
yeah,
I could outrun it, I could trick it or whatever. But the idea of being swarmed by 100 small horses is all right.
that's fair. I feel like my job is a little bit like that. So I'm like, I can do that, but the one big one is a little scarier.
I suppose mine too. Max, is there anything you want to promote to the listeners here for October and November?
Absolutely. So, one of the ways that y'all can get involved is that we have two workplace culture summits coming up in October and November. And the ways that the workplace culture summit has changed for us over the years is now we focus a lot more on supporting you as an individual worker. So, if you are an ally and want to know how to navigate your workplace as an ally, if you're a small business owner, if you're a trans person, you're looking for support, that's going to be great for y'all. So, feel free to hop on our website under the events tab and learn more there. And then also we will be doing some work in around like National Trans Day of Remembrance coming up in November and some additional education on that as well. So you can learn more about how to support your trans neighbors.
That's excellent. And while we're here, I want to promote that through October 19th, and I'll put the link here in the show. I'm doing a fundraiser for the Iowa Trans Mutual Aid Fund. So I'm hoping that people can sponsor $1 a mile, that's $26.20, or 50 cents a mile, that's $13.10, or have fun with the math, $262 is also okay. But we'd love to see how many of us can come together. I guess this is 100 duck-sized horses
Yes,
to see
yes,
how much we can show up for direct mutual aid to provide health care for folks who need it.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Well, Max Mowitz, it's great to meet you. Thanks so much for joining us today and keep on doing the good work. And that does it for us today. Thank you all for joining us. Keep doing the good work, Des Moines.